Midwinter wind combs through the glass canyons of the city, carrying the distant throb of traffic and the brittle scent of snow. Beneath a spire of steel where screens trill stock prices in colors that refuse to feel, a man in a charcoal coat stands with his hand on the revolving door. His name is Marcus Hale, architect of algorithms, patron saint of metrics, a billionaire who learned to translate feelings into dashboards, because numbers never lied to him the way people once did. Behind the door, a marble atrium glows with warm light and warmer handshakes. Tonight is his gala, a celebration of a new initiative. A predictive health platform that promises to map risk the way cartographers once traced coastlines. The city's most polished faces wait for him under a chandelier like a frozen constellation. A violinist practices a tidy arpeggio. Everything is in its place. Then something not in its place slips through the wind. A low human whistle, soft as breath on cold glass. It threads the noise in a single silver line and draws him back from the door as if it had tugged a string tied to his heart. The tune bears a gravity he cannot name. It sounds like dusk, like the first star, like an old promise that remembers you even when you don't remember it. He turns. On the granite steps to the side of the entrance, where the building's warmth cannot reach, a small girl sits with her back against a heat grate. She is no more than 9. Her hair is gathered into careful plaits that speak of hands which once believed in order, now frayed by weather and time. The coat wrapped around her is thin, the color of washed denim. Beside her, a cardboard sign leans like a tired shoulder, says nothing. Blankness sometimes pleads louder than words. She whistles again, the same melancholy tune, a tide that seems to go out and never return. The melody drifts through the revolving door, slides up the marble, quells the violinist into silence. Conversations falter. Faces turn, polite concern paired with the quick calculations of charity and inconvenience. Marcus feels the familiar reflex rise. Alert the concierge, call security, restore the sealed world. This is a building of glass, he reminds himself, not of miracles. Yet the notes keep unspooling, and with them a memory he has kept underwater for years. The soft hum of his mother as she folded sheets in a tiny apartment, a tune she called the Ash Tree Lullaby, because their only tree on the block shed a pale wash of leaves like hands letting go. He has not heard it since she died. He never learned it. He never found it anywhere else. The girl's lips shape the last phrase. A flake of snow lands on her cheek and does not melt. She stops whistling and looks up as if she knew the song hadn't merely passed his ears. It had rung an old bell inside him. Her eyes, large and lucid, hold a steady intelligence not dulled by hunger. She sees him the way a sick person sees the dawn, with longing and also a clear sense of how distant it can be. A security guard in a navy coat trots down the steps, apologetic and brisk. "Sir, I'll ask her to move along. We'll keep the entrance clear." The guard's breath breaks in white puffs. His hand hovers above the girl's shoulder, careful, as if she might crack. Marcus opens his mouth to agree. It would be easy. Tonight he must speak about a future that anticipates suffering before it arrives. He needs no errant threads, no unquantified variables. Tonight. But the whistle ripples inside him. He realizes, to his surprise, that he is afraid. Not of the girl, of the part of him that wants to step toward her, that wants to ask a child whistling a ghost of his childhood if she knows him, if somehow she has come to return something he lost. He hears the board chair laughing behind the door, sees the glimmer of crystal, the clatter of cutlery heralding the donor's dinner. He imagines the keynote projected onto a 30-foot screen, the curve of lives saved by early detection by data. He is practiced at this performance, a liturgy of certainty offered to soothe the city's fear of mortality. He steps toward the door, hand raised. A gust capes the girl in cold air. She shivers, then tightens her grip on the invisible world within the melody, like someone tightening a blanket over a sleeping younger self. She curls around a small backpack, its zipper missing a pull. On her left wrist a bracelet of ship blue thread is tied in a knot. The thread is frayed. He recognizes the knot. He recognizes the way you tie something when you know you will have to keep it tied through storms. "Leave it," he hears himself say to the guard. His voice sounds borrowed from another life. She's fine. The guard blinks, unsure if he has misheard the man whose name hangs, gold-leafed, above the atrium desk. The wind tastes of iron. The girl says nothing. She looks at Marcus as if taking his measure, then at the door as if measuring her distance from being invisible. Sir, the guests. The guard begins. The guests can wait. Marcus's gaze remains on the girl. He kneels to bring his eyes level with hers. The stone leaches warmth from his kneecaps. It feels almost like penance. What's your name? The girl studies him with a calm beyond the cold. Lila, she answers after a pause, as if he has earned only that first coin of her trust. Are you hungry, Lila? He asks. His hands are steady, his heart less so. There's a cafe downstairs. She watches his face the way one watches a bridge while deciding whether it will hold. Her voice arrives quiet, as clear as iced water. You're late, she says. For what? The word catches in him. For hearing it, she replies, and her gaze does not flinch. I've been whistling all day. Something opens and breathes in the space between them. He wants to tell her that hearing isn't always a choice, that sometimes a song must chip through armor before you notice the ache beneath. Instead, he glances at the sign beside her, that wordless square. Blank can mean, I have nothing. It can also mean right here. Where are your parents? He asks, then regrets it at once. Because it is the question the world always asks children the world has set down. Her mouth hardens. Her eyes drift to the corner of the building where a subway vent exhales heat. Mom's trying to get well, she says. Hospice is a word that makes people stare at their shoes. The violinist inside the atrium lowers her bow. Through the glass, faces recalibrate the appropriate expression for tragedy encountered at a tasteful distance. The chandelier hums. Snow freckles Lila's plates. Marcus feels the calculus of his life. Meetings, valuations, reputations, press like a weight on his chest. He can step inside and reset the music, resume the procession toward the speech he has memorized, the future he can plot. Or he can stand on the steps and fall out of the orbit of his carefully arranged stars. He imagines his late mother's hands, reddened by work, smoothing his hair while that lullaby carried the day behind them like a patient river. He hears her voice, as close as breath. You can always count something, baby. But counting is not the same as keeping. What you keep with your hands and your heart. Come with me, he says, before his caution can drag the words back. Just for the warmth. Just for a meal. He gestures toward the guard, who is trying, with kindness and policy, to be a wall. Lila rises slowly, her knees cracking the way roofs sound under first snow. I'm not a problem, she says. And in her tone is the hard knowledge that adults slide children into categories the way coins drop into slots. You're a person, Marcus answers. The sentence surprises him by how much he means it. She studies him again. The ship blue bracelet presses into her skin. I don't want your money, she says. I want to finish my song where it's warm. The last part is where the wish goes. Then we'll find a warm place for the wish, Marcus says. And he holds out his hand, not as a command but as a possibility. Lila looks at the hand. The atrium breathes behind the glass. The city folds its arms and waits. Snow draws a lace of white on the stone. She does not take his hand. She simply begins to whistle the last phrase, faint but unwavering, and steps toward the revolving door, small and straight-backed, carrying the melody like a lantern through winter. As the door turns, the chandelier trembles. The violinist, without quite knowing why, finds the key and joins her. The gala guests fall silent. Somewhere inside Marcus, a locked room, hears the key slide home. He follows her in, past faces shining with curiosity and judgment, past the portraits of donors with their careful smiles. Lila's whistle pours into the warm air. The last note hangs, a thin thread shining in the light, then vanishes like breath on glass. She looks up at him, her cheeks flushed now not only with cold. Sometimes, she says, a song finds the person it belongs to. In the stillness that follows, surrounded by the world he built and by a child from the world he forgot, Marcus understands he stands at a threshold that cannot be mapped by an app or a graph. It is the threshold where a life turns, where a man accustomed to proof must decide whether to trust a melody that knows his name. "Stay," he murmurs, to her or to the moment he does not know. "Stay and eat, and be warm." Lila nods, and for the first time a ghost of a smile flares. Faint, then firm, as if warmed by a match struck in a dark room. "Only if you let me finish the wish," she says. "Finish it," he replies. The violinist lifts her bow. The security guard relaxes. The board chair glances at the schedule, already ruined, already saved. And the door to the marble hall swings wider, like a mouth about to speak a different kind of speech. The marble atrium, once a sanctum of precision and prestige, now breathes differently. The hush is not of reverence for wealth but of curiosity, like a theater audience when the play has suddenly veered off script. Lila's small figure glides beside Marcus, her whistle softening into silence as if she has delivered them both to a precipice. The donors, their gowns and tuxedos shimmering like constellations, tilt their heads. Some murmur disbelief in silk tones. Others whisper about propriety, security, liability. Yet the child continues forward, not cowed, carrying herself with a grace both fragile and defiant, as though she has walked through colder doors before. Marcus feels their eyes. For decades, he has thrived beneath the weight of expectation, wielding logic like armor. Tonight that armor is fractured by something he cannot quantify. The presence of this child who has crossed into his world uninvited, unafraid. The maitre d' approaches with a careful smile, his polished shoes whispering on marble. "Mr. Hale," he says softly. "The evening program will wait," Marcus replies, his voice low but decisive. He gestures toward the back. "Bring her something warm to eat. Soup, bread." The maitre d' hesitates only a heartbeat before bowing and vanishing, relieved to have a command. Lila's gaze roams the room with wary fascination. The chandelier above her seems impossibly far away, as though it hangs from a sky she does not inhabit. She brushes a finger over the velvet drape of a chair, her touch reverent yet unclaiming, like one who knows beauty as something borrowed. At a nearby table, an elderly donor whispers too loudly, "She doesn't belong here." Marcus turns his head. His eyes, usually as cool as stone, now flare with something more human. "Neither do we if we cannot welcome her." The room stills. The words are not loud, but they pierce like a note held too long. Lila sits at a corner table, her backpack clutched to her chest. When the soup arrives, steam curling fragrant tendrils upward, she lowers her face to the bowl with a sigh that trembles the glass of water beside it. She eats carefully, each spoonful a prayer she refuses to waste. Marcus sits across from her. He folds his hands, unused to the silence of companionship. He has eaten with prime ministers and presidents, with scientists and innovators, but never with someone who seems to hold in her small hands both the frailty of the world and its quiet resilience. He clears his throat. "Where have you been sleeping?" Her eyes remain on the soup. Different places. Sometimes the shelter. Sometimes the hospital floor near my mom. Sometimes here near the warm vent. I move when they tell me to. "Your mother." He swallows the stone in his throat. "You said hospice?" She says it's just a long nap. Lila's spoon halts in midair. "But I know naps don't need nurses." The spoon dips again. Her calmness is more piercing than grief. Marcus leans back. The marble pillars behind him stretch like accusations, monuments to all he has built, yet meaningless to a girl who measures wealth in hours of warmth and bowls of soup. He hears the board chair cough into his fist, the signal that the donors expect him at the podium. He pictures the speech he has rehearsed, slides bristling with charts that prove how far ahead his company can predict death. But what is the use of predicting death, he wonders, if one does not know how to meet it with love? "Would you like to stay here tonight?" he asks cautiously. Lila's eyes flick up, startled. They shine with both hunger and suspicion. "Why?" "Because no one should be outside in the snow." His voice trembles despite him. Because your song. He stops himself. Because your song belonged to my mother, he wants to say. Because it belonged to me before I even knew you. But such confessions feel too heavy for this fragile table. Because I'd like you safe. Her small shoulders tense, as though bracing for disappointment. Safe doesn't stay, she whispers. Maybe this time it will. They sit in silence. Around them, the gala teeters between scandal and wonder. Yet in this circle of lamplight, only the two of them exist. The billionaire who owns buildings yet not his own grief, and the child who owns nothing yet carries a melody that binds the air. Finally, she sets her spoon down. If I stay, she says. I finish the wish. Marcus nods. Then finish it. She hums softly, her whistle now a murmur of breath, the final phrase looping and bending. It lingers at the edge of words, as though language itself might break it. When the note fades, she closes her eyes. I wished for someone to hear me, she says. And you did. Marcus feels something shatter inside him. It is not pain. It is release, like a dam breaking, letting through a flood he has been holding back since boyhood. He leans forward, his hands trembling. Then let's see where the wish takes us. The maitre d' clears his throat again. Mr. Hale, the podium. Marcus glances at the stage, at the waiting donors, at the teleprompter glowing like a ghost of obligation. Then he looks at Lila. Tonight, he says, standing. Someone else deserves the stage. Gasps ripple through the room. He gestures to Lila. She has the only song worth hearing. Lila's eyes widen. She shakes her head, clutching her backpack tighter. But the room has already shifted. The violinist raises her bow again, tentative, offering a note like a hand outstretched. Lila exhales. Her lips purse. The whistle emerges once more, fragile yet unwavering. The violin follows, then the cello, then the piano. Within moments, the gala is transformed into something no investor expected. A concert of a child's wish stitched into music, a melody older than logic, carried now by a chorus of instruments. And Marcus, once a man who built his empire on prediction, feels, for the first time, the trembling certainty that love cannot be forecast, only chosen. The music fades, not with applause but with a hush so reverent it seems the marble itself has drawn in breath. For a moment no one dares move. Then, a sound rises from the back. Gentle clapping, hesitant yet sincere. Others join, their polished palms echoing against stone until the hall is filled with the thunder of something richer than approval. Surrender to a truth they had not expected. Lila lowers her eyes, cheeks flushed. She clutches her backpack again, shrinking from the sudden light of attention. Marcus places a hand gently over hers, steadying. It's all right, he murmurs. They're not clapping for me. They're clapping for you. She shakes her head. They don't know me. Then let them learn. The board chair, stiff in his tailored tuxedo, rises with visible strain. Mr. Hale, he says, voice taut with disapproval disguised as civility. This evening was intended to unveil your newest initiative. Investors, partners, dignitaries. They're all here expecting charts and promises. Marcus interrupts softly. Tonight they received something greater. A reminder that we are more than what we measure. He looks around the room, his gaze no longer cold but ablaze with a conviction he didn't know he possessed. Technology can prolong life, yes, but what good is life without love to give it meaning? The silence that follows is deeper than before. It is not agreement, not yet, but contemplation, the kind that cracks walls from the inside. Marcus turns back to Lila. Her spoon rests forgotten in her bowl, her eyes glassy as though she has drifted far away. He kneels beside her chair, lowering himself from the height of authority to the ground of her uncertainty. Lila, he says gently, would you like to come home with me tonight? Just for warmth. Just until we can figure out what's next. Her breath catches. The chandelier's light reflects in her dark eyes like tiny stars. She glances at the crowd, then back to Marcus. People don't keep promises, she says. Then let me try, he answers. A single tear escapes her, though she wipes it away before it can be noticed. "I'll come," she whispers, "but only if I can bring the song." "The song stays with you," Marcus replies. "So it stays with me too." They rise together. Murmurs ripple through the donors' tables. Some avert their eyes, unable to reconcile the sight of wealth bowing to poverty. Others watch with a kind of yearning, as though secretly wishing to trade their wine glasses for the purity of that child's gaze. Outside, the snow has thickened into a hush that blankets the city's noise. The limousine waits, black as a shadow with its door open like a silent question. Marcus ushers Lila inside. She hesitates, her small frame dwarfed by the leather seats, then sets her backpack beside her with a careful pat, as if tucking in a friend. As the car glides away, the city lights smear into streaks on the windows. Inside, silence pools between them, fragile yet full. Marcus studies her reflection. She sits upright, chin high, though fatigue tugs at her eyelids. He wants to ask 1,000 questions, but each one feels like prying open a wound. So instead, he says softly, "You can sleep if you'd like. You're safe." Her eyes flick to him, skeptical yet weary. Safe doesn't last. Maybe tonight it can. She leans her head against the glass. Outside, neon signs flash their promises of pleasure and profit. But within the car there is only the soft rhythm of breath. Marcus feels the weight of something unfamiliar settle into his chest. Not responsibility, not pity, but an ember of tenderness he thought extinguished long ago. When they arrive at his penthouse, the doorman's eyebrows rise but his lips remain sealed. The elevator hums upward, its mirrored walls reflecting a strange pair. The billionaire in his immaculate coat, and the girl whose shoes are worn to threads, but whose eyes hold the depth of oceans. The doors open to a silence vast as a cathedral. The penthouse sprawls in glass and chrome, each surface immaculate, every object in its place. Yet in its perfection lies a sterile loneliness, the echo of a life designed to impress but never to embrace. Lila steps in slowly, her whistle returning in a tentative trill that bounces off the high ceilings. She stops, then tilts her head. "It's too quiet," she says. Marcus looks around as though seeing his home for the first time. The silence that once soothed him now feels suffocating, accusing. "You're right," he admits. She pads across the polished floor, her small shoes leaving faint damp marks from melted snow. She touches the edge of a glass table, peers out at the city through the towering windows, then returns to him. "Do you ever get lonely up here?" The question pierces him more than she knows. "Sometimes," he confesses, his voice low. She studies him, then nods. "I can hear it in the walls." He almost laughs, but the sound catches. Instead, he kneels once more to meet her eyes. "Then maybe you can teach the walls a new song." Her lips curve into the faintest smile. She unzips her backpack and pulls out a threadbare stuffed bear, its fur worn smooth by years of clutching. She places it on the pristine sofa as though planting a flag. "There," she declares softly. "Now it's not empty." Marcus feels something inside him shift, an ache that is also a beginning. For the first time in years, his home does not feel like a museum. Feels like a place waiting for life. That night, as Lila curls on the sofa under a quilt too large for her, Marcus stands by the window. Snow drifts in luminous spirals beyond the glass. Behind him, the steady sound of her breathing fills the silence that once ruled this space. It is not loud. It is enough. He closes his eyes and whispers into the night, unsure if to God, to memory, or to himself. "Let me keep this promise." Morning light leaks through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long strokes of gold across the penthouse. Dust motes drift like tiny constellations, suspended in silence. Marcus wakes not to the sterile hum of his automated blinds, but to something softer, a low, wandering whistle. It coils through the air like steam from a teacup. He rises barefoot and follows the sound. In the kitchen, he finds Lila perched on a bar stool, swinging her legs above the marble floor. She has discovered the fruit bowl, ornamental apples gleaming under polish. One is in her hand, its skin bitten into with tentative defiance. The whistle pauses as she chews. Her backpack sits beside her like a loyal companion. The stuffed bear rests on the counter, its head tilted as though keeping watch. "You're awake early," Marcus says quietly. "I never sleep heavy in strange places," Lila replies matter-of-fact. She wipes her mouth with the back of her sleeve. "But your house didn't feel mean. Just lonely." Marcus almost smiles. "I suppose it is." He steps toward the refrigerator, hesitating. He has not cooked for anyone in decades. The staff usually arrives to prepare his meals, discreet and invisible. But something in him rebels against summoning them now. This morning is not for routine. It is for something more fragile, more human. "Pancakes?" he asks, surprised to hear the word from his own mouth. Lila tilts her head. "You know how to make pancakes?" "I can try." She watches him with open skepticism, then shrugs. "Okay, but if you burn them, we'll whistle instead." The challenge makes him chuckle. He fumbles with flour, eggs, and milk, measuring imprecisely, his hands unused to such tasks. Batter splatters onto his shirt. He curses softly under his breath, but Lila's laughter spills out. A sound so clear it startles him more than any failure. "See?" she says, grinning. "Your kitchen needed a mess." When the first pancake lands too thick and raw in the middle, she pokes it with her fork. "It's ugly," she declares, "but it smells happy." Marcus looks at her across the counter, and for the first time in years, he feels the weight of joy settling in, awkward but undeniable. They eat together, syrup dripping, fingers sticky. Lila hums between bites, fragments of that same melancholy tune now reshaped into something brighter. Marcus listens, wondering if the song is changing, or if it is he who is learning to hear it differently. After breakfast, she wanders through the penthouse, exploring with cautious wonder. Her small hands trail along glass and chrome, pausing at the framed photographs of Marcus with political leaders, business icons, and celebrities. She frowns. "You look not happy," she says, pointing at one. He follows her gaze. In the photo, he is shaking hands with a foreign dignitary, his smile tight, rehearsed. "That's what they wanted me to look like," he admits. "What did you want?" The question halts him. He opens his mouth, but no answer comes. He has lived so long in pursuit of targets, valuations, headlines. Desire was always measured in acquisitions, never in quiet mornings with pancakes. "I don't know," he says finally. Lila studies him with unsettling clarity, then turns to the window where snow still drifts. "Sometimes people forget to want the right things," she murmurs. Her words echo long after she has padded away to examine the bookshelves. Marcus sinks into a chair, her observation ricocheting through him. He remembers the countless nights spent alone in this vast space, surrounded by every convenience money could buy, yet haunted by an emptiness wealth could not fill. Later, he offers to drive her to visit her mother. The thought of this mysterious woman weighs on him, the source of Lila's resilience, and the shadow over her young life. They travel through quieter streets where neon gives way to peeling paint and weary storefronts. The hospice lies in a converted church, its bell tower cracked, its windows glowing faintly like tired eyes. Inside, the scent of antiseptic battles with lavender sachets tucked near the beds. Lila leads the way with instinct, weaving past nurses who glance with polite recognition. She stops at a small room where a thin woman lies beneath a crocheted blanket. Her hair is patchy, her skin pale as parchment, but her eyes brighten when she sees her daughter. "Mom," Lila whispers, rushing to her side. She lays the stuffed bear against her mother's chest. "I kept him safe." Her mother strokes her hair with fragile fingers, then looks past her to Marcus. The faintest smile flickers. "You brought her," she says, her voice hoarse but warm. Marcus hesitates at the threshold. "I found her at my building." "She finds people," the woman replies, a glimmer of pride in her tone. "She whistles, and the right one's here." Marcus swallows. "She has a gift." Her mother closes her eyes briefly, as if gathering strength. "Promise me," she whispers. That you'll listen to her song. It carries more truth than all the noise of this city. Lila clutches her hand tightly. Don't talk like that. But her mother only smiles, faint and tired. Love is stronger than time, baby. Even when I can't stay, the song stays. The words pierce Marcus. He feels himself standing on the brink of something immense. Responsibility, yes, but also grace. He looks at Lila, who presses her forehead against her mother's arm, and wonders if fate has placed her in his life not as a burden, but as a gift. The day wanes. When they leave, Lila is silent in the car, staring at the stuffed bear in her lap. Marcus does not press her. Instead, he drives slowly, as if prolonging the journey will somehow slow time itself. Back at the penthouse, evening settles like a veil. Lila curls up on the sofa, whispering to the bear. Marcus watches from the window, the city sprawling below. For the first time, the skyline looks less like triumph and more like a question. In the hush between them, he hears again the faint echo of her whistle, softer now, like a prayer stitched into the night. The following days unfurl like a tentative dawn. What begins as a reluctant arrangement stretches into a fragile rhythm. Marcus, once consumed by meetings and data streams, now finds himself watching the clock for when Lila will wake, for when she will whistle softly in the kitchen as she pours cereal into a bowl too big for her small hands. The penthouse, long a mausoleum of order, shifts beneath her presence. A blanket draped crookedly across the sofa remains where she left it. A sticky ring of juice stains the marble counter, but instead of summoning staff to scrub it, Marcus leaves it, surprised to find the imperfection comforting. Even the sterile white walls seem warmer, as though echoing her laughter. At night, Lila curls on the sofa while Marcus pretends to review contracts. Her humming fills the air like a gentle tide, carrying him away from the relentless logic of his old world. Sometimes he catches himself closing his laptop, just to listen. One evening, after a simple dinner of soup and bread, Lila asks, "Did you always live alone?" Marcus hesitates. "For many years." "Why?" Her gaze is clear, not pitying, just curious. "Because it was easier," he admits. He twirls his spoon slowly. "No one to disappoint. No one to leave." She frowns. "But also, no one to laugh with. No one to keep the walls from echoing." Her words hit like stones dropped into a deep well. He nods slowly. "Yes, that too." Lila picks up her bear and hugs it close. "I think people are like houses. Empty ones fall apart faster." Marcus cannot speak. He watches her, this child who has lived too much, who wields truth as gently as a lullaby. Days later, a winter storm drapes the city in white silence. From the penthouse windows, snowflakes whirl like restless spirits. The storm strands them together with no distractions, no meetings, no schedules. Marcus decides to try something foreign, cooking a proper meal. Lila insists on helping, though her idea of helping is dancing barefoot across the kitchen tiles, whistling as she stirs too much salt into the soup. Marcus laughs, a full, unguarded laugh that startles him. The sound is echoed by hers, their laughter braiding together until the storm outside feels less fierce. That night, after the dishes are stacked haphazardly and the storm has hushed to a whisper, Lila begins her tune again. This time, Marcus listens differently. The melody, once sorrowful, now bends toward hope. He leans against the wall, eyes closed, and allows it to wash over him. He feels his mother's presence again, not as grief but as warmth, as if through this child the lullaby has returned to heal what was broken. Later, when she has drifted to sleep with her bear tucked under her chin, Marcus whispers into the quiet, "Thank you, whoever you are, God, fate, song, for sending her." But peace is fragile, like glass, can crack without warning. The following afternoon, while Marcus reads by the fire, the penthouse intercom buzzes. The doorman's voice is cautious. "Sir, there's a woman here. Says she's social services. She has questions about the child." Marcus feels his chest tighten. He glances at Lila, curled on the rug with crayons scattered around her, drawing a crooked house with smoke curling from the chimney. She looks up, sensing the change in his face. "Who is it?" she asks. "Someone asking questions," he replies carefully. Her shoulders tense. The whistle dies in her throat. Moments later, a woman in a dark coat stands in his living room, credentials flashing coldly from a lanyard. Her voice is clipped, efficient. "Mr. Hale, we've received reports of a child residing here. Without proper guardianship papers, this could be a violation." Marcus steadies his breath. She has nowhere else to go. Her mother is in hospice. I couldn't leave her in the snow. The woman's gaze sharpens. Intentions don't supersede the law. We'll need to arrange proper placement. Lila's crayons scatter from her trembling hands. She clutches her bear, eyes wide with a fear too old for her age. "Please don't send me away," she whispers. The words pierce Marcus like knives. He steps forward, his voice steel wrapped in calm. "She stays here, with me, until her mother's condition is settled." The woman notes something on her clipboard, unflinching. "We'll review, but understand this is temporary. You cannot simply claim a child." Her heels click as she departs, leaving a silence heavy as thunderclouds. Marcus turns back. Lila's face is pale, her body curled into itself. "They'll take me," she says, her voice breaking. "Safe never stays." He kneels, his hand trembling as he places it gently on her shoulder. "Listen to me, Lila. I won't let them take you. Not without a fight." Tears brim in her eyes. "People always say that. Then they go." "Not me," Marcus whispers. His throat tightens, his vision blurs. "Not me." Outside, the snow keeps falling, silent and relentless, as though the heavens themselves are waiting to see if his promise will hold. The snowstorm passes, but its shadow lingers. The penthouse feels less like sanctuary and more like a fragile glass dome, one that could shatter with the next knock on the door. Marcus keeps his promise visibly. He calls lawyers, makes inquiries, pulls strings through connections that usually open any door. But each conversation ends with the same sharp edge. Guardianship is a process, and processes take time. Time, Marcus realizes, is the one currency he cannot control. Lila notices the shift in him. She sits cross-legged on the rug, drawing pictures of houses that always have two figures in the window, herself and a taller figure beside her. She never labels them, but Marcus understands. One evening, she holds up a drawing and asks, "Would you put this on your fridge if you had one?" Marcus almost laughs. "I have a fridge." She shakes her head. "No, a real one, with magnets, with life on it." He swallows hard. His stainless steel, state-of-the-art refrigerator is bare, sterile as a showroom. Without speaking, he takes the drawing and tapes it there with a piece of medical tape. The crooked house looks absurd against the gleaming steel, but it transforms the room more than any million-dollar art piece ever did. That night, Lila hums her lullaby softly while Marcus works. He pretends to read emails, but every note tightens the knot in his chest. She has no idea that strangers are drafting papers that might tear her away. The crisis strikes 2 days later. Marcus takes Lila to visit her mother at the hospice again. The room smells faintly of roses now, a futile attempt to mask the scent of endings. Her mother's breath is shallow, her skin ashen. "Mom," Lila whispers, gripping her hand. Her mother opens her eyes slowly. "My songbird." She smiles weakly. Then her gaze drifts to Marcus, sharper than her frail body suggests. "Mr. Hale, you hear her, don't you? The way the world tries to quiet her, but she sings anyway." Marcus nods, though his throat tightens too much for words. The woman's hand trembles as she reaches for his. She needs someone to fight for her, to love her the way numbers never could. Marcus feels the weight of a vow pressing against him, heavier than any contract he has signed. He squeezes her hand gently. "I will." Her lips curve faintly. "Then I can rest." The monitor by her bed stutters. Lila's small voice rises, trembling. "No, Mom. Don't rest. Please don't." She leans close, tears staining her cheeks. "I'll whistle forever if you stay." Her mother's eyes close, her chest rising once, twice, then falling into stillness. The room grows unbearably quiet, broken only by Lila's sobbing hum, her whistle collapsing into breathless cries. Marcus stands frozen, grief surging through him, though this woman was never his. Still, in that moment, he feels the finality like a stone sinking into his soul. He kneels beside Lila, who clutches her mother's hand as if by sheer force she could tether her back. "She's gone," Marcus whispers hoarsely. "But her love isn't. Still here. With you. With us." Lila shakes her head violently. "They'll take me now. If she's gone, they'll take me." Her terror is raw, primal. Marcus gathers her into his arms, and though she stiffens at first, she finally buries her face against his chest. "I won't let them," he murmurs fiercely. "Do you hear me? I won't." But even as he says it, he knows the battle ahead will not bend easily to his will. The law is merciless, and men with clipboards will not be swayed by songs. That night back at the penthouse, Lila refuses to eat. She sits by the window, watching the city bleed neon across the snow. "I told you safe doesn't stay," she whispers. Her whistle emerges, fractured and mournful, a song broken mid-phrase. Marcus watches her, his heart breaking. He longs to fix it, to patch her world with promises, but promises are brittle in the face of systems. Still, he cannot surrender. He closes his laptop with finality, strides to her side, and kneels until they are eye to eye. "Then we fight," he says. "Together. For safe to stay." Her lips tremble. "Do you really mean it?" "Yes." He takes her small hand in both of his. "For as long as I live, you will not be alone." Her eyes brim, but for the first time since the hospice, her whistle carries one clean note. A note like dawn after a long night. Outside, the storm has ended. The city, for all its noise, feels hushed, as though listening for what will come next. The days blur into one another, weighted with grief yet tethered by fragile routine. Lila now sleeps in the guest room rather than on the sofa, though she insists on leaving the door cracked open. "So the walls don't forget I'm here." Marcus honors it, listening each night for the soft whistle that reassures him she has not vanished into dream or despair. Her mother's funeral arrives under a gray sky, the kind that seems to press down upon the mourners like a stone lid. The service is small. A few nurses from the hospice, a weary chaplain, Marcus and Lila. The child stands stiff beside the grave, her hand wrapped so tightly around the frayed blue thread bracelet that her knuckles blanch. The chaplain murmurs prayers of rest, but Lila interrupts with her tune. Fragile, wavering, yet unbroken. At first, the sound seems too slight for the cold air. Then it deepens, her breath steadying as though her mother herself hums through her. The nurses bow their heads. Even the chaplain falters, stepping back as if conceding the ritual to her. Marcus feels the melody pierce the marrow of his bones. He has listened to orchestras, attended operas in gilded halls, but nothing has ever cleaved him open like this small girl whistling her mother to rest. When the last note fades, Lila whispers, "She can find her way now." On the ride back, silence presses between them. Finally, Lila says, "Now they'll come for me." Marcus grips the steering wheel tighter. "And I'll be ready." That readiness is tested sooner than he expects. 2 days later, he is summoned to a family court hearing. The state intends to place Lila in foster care. The caseworker from before stands firm, her tone professional, her eyes unreadable. "Mr. Hale, we appreciate your intentions, but guardianship requires process, and temporary placement is best for the child's stability." "Best for stability?" Marcus's voice rings sharper than he intends. "You would call tearing her from the only safe place she has stability?" The judge, an older man with eyes dulled by years of procedure, raises a hand for quiet. "Mr. Hale, the law requires due diligence. Without paperwork or precedent, your arrangement is irregular." Lila sits at the table beside Marcus, clutching her bear. Her eyes plead silently. Marcus feels her small hand graze his sleeve under the table, as though anchoring herself to him. In that moment, the speech he had prepared, the one lined with facts, with citations, with demonstrations of his capacity to provide, is burned away by a deeper fire. He rises, his voice steady but trembling with truth. I've built empires from numbers. I've mapped disease. I've calculated futures. I've trusted nothing I couldn't measure. But love. He swallows, his throat raw. Love is not a number. And yet it is the only thing that makes a life worth all the numbers. The courtroom murmurs. The judge frowns, unused to such language in these walls. Marcus presses on. This child has already lost more than most of us can fathom. She does not need another stranger's ceiling over her head. She needs someone to keep the promise her mother begged me to keep. She needs to know safe can stay. He turns to Lila. Her eyes are wet, but she is whistling softly, tremblingly. The sound rises through the courtroom, weaving between the wooden benches, pulling silence in its wake. Gasps ripple. The stenographer lowers her hands from the keys. Even the judge sits straighter, as though startled awake from a long slumber. This song, Marcus says, his voice breaking, it is more than a tune. It is faith stitched into breath. It found me when I didn't know I needed finding. It healed a wound in me that all my wealth could not touch. And if the law cannot see that, then the law is blind to the very thing that makes us human. The room holds its breath. Lila finishes her phrase and clutches his hand openly now. The echo of her whistle lingers like a benediction. The judge clears his throat, visibly shaken. We will need time to deliberate. But Marcus hears the shift. The caseworker's eyes are softer now, her clipboard held loosely. The bailiff looks away, blinking. The walls of procedure have cracked, just slightly, under the weight of love's truth. When they leave the courtroom, the winter sun spills pale gold through the high windows. Lila leans against Marcus, exhausted but still clutching his hand. Did we win? She asks, her voice small. Not yet, he answers, brushing her hair back from her forehead. But they heard you. That's the first step. She nods. Safe doesn't always come fast, but maybe it can come slow. Marcus smiles faintly, though his chest aches with both pride and fear. Yes, maybe it can. Outside, the city churns with its usual hunger for wealth and noise, but for Marcus and Lila, time slows to the rhythm of a whistle carried between them, a fragile melody that refuses to be silenced. The days after the hearing hang heavy with uncertainty. Lawyers trade papers, clerks shuffle files, and officials murmur about procedures that take months. Yet within the penthouse, time has a different texture, threaded by the fragile bond between Marcus and Lila. She decorates his sterile rooms with drawings. Suns with uneven rays, houses with open doors, stick figures labeled with simple words like me and him. Marcus tapes them everywhere, on mirrors, on the refrigerator, even across the glass windows overlooking the skyline. When business associates arrive for meetings, they glance at the childish scrawls with discomfort. Marcus no longer cares. One evening, after a long day of legal calls, Marcus finds Lila sitting cross-legged on the balcony, her coat wrapped tight, her breath puffing in the cold. She whistles softly into the night, letting the sound carry out over the glittering city. What are you doing out here? Marcus asks, stepping beside her. Sending my song, she replies without turning. In case Mom's listening. In case the angels need to find her. Her small form against the vast horizon pierces him. He kneels, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. She hears you. I promise. Lila glances up. Do you believe in promises now? He nods slowly. Because of you, yes. That night, Marcus dreams. He sees his mother in a dim apartment, folding laundry, humming the same tune Lila carries. She smiles at him with eyes that know every wound. When he wakes, the melody is still in his ears. He realizes it is not just Lila's song. It is the thread that has stitched his past to his present, weaving grief into grace. But the world beyond the penthouse is not moved by dreams. Days later, a letter arrives from the court. Lila will be placed in foster care while the adoption petition is reviewed. The decision slices through the fragile piece like a knife. When Marcus tells her, Lila's face crumples, though she tries to hold it still. "I told you," she whispers. "Safe doesn't stay." Marcus drops to his knees before her, taking her trembling hands. "This isn't the end. I'll fight. Do you hear me? I'll fight until you are back home." Her eyes flash with both hope and terror. "But what if they win? What if you give up?" "I won't," he vows. "Not this time. I've spent my life chasing things that vanish. I won't let you vanish." The day she is taken is brutal in its simplicity. A social worker arrives with paperwork, her tone rehearsed and polite. Lila clings to her bear, her eyes wide with panic. Marcus tries to argue, but the worker's words are stone. Temporary placement, required process, not optional. "Please," Lila cries as they lead her toward the door. Her whistle breaks into sobs, her song collapsing under grief. "Don't let them." Marcus's chest feels like it is tearing open. He wants to break every law, to shatter every wall. But his arms fall empty as she is guided out, her small frame swallowed by the hallway. The door closes. Silence falls like ash. That night, the penthouse is colder than it has ever been. Marcus sits alone in the dark, the city's lights blurring through the glass. He hears phantom echoes of her whistle in every corner, each note a knife. He presses his palms to his eyes, and for the first time in years, he prays. Not to logic, not to systems, but to whatever mercy might hear him. "Bring her back to me," he whispers into the dark, "or give me the strength to bring myself to her." In the silence that follows, faint as breath, he almost hears the lullaby, Lila's tune, his mother's tune, threading through the walls. A reminder, a call. And in that moment, Marcus knows the truth. He cannot wait for systems to decide. Love is not patient when a child's heart is at stake. He rises, determination burning through grief like a torch in night. This fight is no longer about wealth or legality or even promises. It is about faith in something larger than himself, faith that love, once chosen, must be kept, no matter the cost. The following morning, Marcus arrives at the courthouse with no entourage, no legal team, only a single folder tucked under his arm. Inside it are not charts or contracts but drawings. Lila's crooked houses, sons, and stick figures. He has carried them like relics, fragile proof of something greater than evidence. The hearing room is stark, its walls lined with files and rules. The judge seated once more with tired gravity. The caseworker sits stiffly, her clipboard balanced like a shield. Lila enters with a foster guardian, her small hand clenched around her bear. Her eyes brighten when they meet Marcus's, but fear clouds them almost instantly, as though she has learned too well not to trust hope. The judge begins with formalities, words heavy with law. Marcus barely hears them. He rises when permitted, unfolding the pages in his folder and spreading them on the bench before him. "Your Honor," he says, his voice thick. "These are not financial records, not medical charts, not proof of my wealth or capacity. They are the only proof that matters. This child, Lila, has drawn herself into my life, into my home, into my heart." He lifts one of the pages, a drawing of two figures inside a house, the words "me" and "him" scrawled above. "She gave me this the day after her mother passed. She told me empty houses fall apart faster. And she was right. I was an empty house before she came." The courtroom murmurs. The foster guardian shifts uncomfortably. Marcus's voice trembles but grows stronger. "I've spent my life mastering algorithms that predict death. But love is what gives life meaning. Without her, I return to silence. With her, I have a home. Her song, her whistle, healed something in me that I thought was beyond repair. And if you remove her from me, you don't just take a child from a house. You take love from where it has finally taken root." Lila, trembling, stands from her seat. She begins to whistle, the melancholy tune that started everything. At first it quivers, but then steadies, weaving through the courtroom like sunlight breaking through clouds. The notes echo off the walls, drawing tears from faces unaccustomed to softness. Even the judge bows his head, the sound prying open something buried long ago. When she finishes, she whispers, "He's the promise my mom asked for." Silence holds the room in reverence. The judge clears his throat, his voice unsteady. "Mr. Hale, you understand the responsibility you're asking for?" Marcus meets his gaze, eyes wet. "I understand that love is the only responsibility worth carrying." The gavel strikes once, echoing like a bell. Guardianship granted. Pending adoption. Lila gasps. Her bear tumbles from her arms as she runs to Marcus, flinging herself against him. He gathers her close, his suit dampened by her tears and his own. The courtroom dissolves around them. For a moment, there is only the sound of her breathing, steady and safe against his chest. When they leave the courthouse, the winter sun is breaking through clouds, gilding the snow in sudden brilliance. Marcus lifts her into his arms, and she laughs. A sound as pure as her whistle, a sound that turns the city's noise into music. That evening, back at the penthouse, Lila hangs her drawings across the windows like stained glass. The skyline glows through the colors, transformed. Marcus sits beside her on the sofa as she whistles once more, this time weaving joy into the melody. He closes his eyes, hearing both his mother's lullaby and Lila's voice twined together, two echoes mended into one. For the first time in decades, Marcus does not feel alone. The walls no longer echo emptiness. They sing. Weeks later, the penthouse is unrecognizable. Where once there had been silence and sterile perfection, now warmth spills from every corner. The refrigerator is cluttered with Lila's drawings. A second-hand bookshelf has appeared in the living room, stacked with storybooks she insisted on choosing. The bear, patched and repaired by Marcus's clumsy hands, sits proudly on the sofa as though it too belongs. On a Saturday morning, sunlight floods the kitchen. Marcus flips pancakes, no longer lopsided, though occasionally still too brown, while Lila sets the table, humming her tune. The whistle is no longer purely melancholy. It lilts with brightness, as though sorrow and joy now share the same breath. "Yours look almost real this time," she teases, sliding into her chair. Marcus feigns indignation. "Almost? That's high praise." She giggles, the sound bouncing off the walls like light. Later, they visit the small park near the hospice, where her mother rests beneath a simple headstone. Lila kneels, tucking a fresh drawing into the grass. Another house with 3 figures this time. Herself, her mother, and Marcus. She whispers, "See, Mom? Safe stayed." Marcus kneels beside her, his hand resting gently on her back. For the first time, the word family does not feel borrowed. Feels true. Months pass. Spring arrives, scattering blossoms along city streets. In a converted church not far from the hospice, children's laughter echoes where silence once lingered. A new youth center has opened, funded by Marcus but named Lila's Song. Its mission is simple, to give children without safe places a chance to find them. On opening day, Marcus stands on the modest stage, but he does not speak first. Instead, Lila steps forward, braids swinging, her bear tucked under one arm. She whistles her tune, clear, steady, no longer lonely. Volunteers, children, and visitors all fall silent, listening as the melody transforms the air into something sacred. When she finishes, she looks at Marcus and smiles. Now everybody hears it. He bows his head, overcome. Hand in hand, they cut the ribbon together. Later, as the sun sets, they return home. From the balcony, they watch the city lights flicker awake. Lila leans against Marcus, her small body warm against his side. "We're the luckiest family in the world," she whispers. Marcus tightens his arm around her. "Yes, we are." And so it was not wealth, nor brilliance, nor the sharp edge of technology that healed a soul, but a child's whistle, carrying love like breath through winter. A lonely man, who once counted only numbers, learned to keep something deeper, a promise. And a child, who believed safe could never stay, discovered that love, once chosen, is the only safe that endures. In the end, it is not riches that become our legacy. It is not the towers we build, nor the empires we leave behind. The truest legacy is love, quiet, stubborn, miraculous love, that bridges despair with hope, emptiness with belonging, strangers with family. For it is love alone that makes us whole, and love alone that teaches us. The greatest wealth we can leave the world is not measured in gold or code, but in the faith that safe can stay, and that no song ever goes unheard.